It's been said that Bigfoot exhibits nocturnal behavior, perhaps to hunt or to avoid detection. But the cloak of darkness couldn't hide the creature in the stunning footage you're about to see.
A man who could survive anywhere, vanished without a trace in the one place no one dares to look. This wasn't just a hike. This was Gates of the Arctic. No roads, no help, no second chances. Thomas Seibold, a master survivalist, walked into the Alaskan wilderness with confidence. But something followed him out there. 2 months later, he was gone. What his family discovered deep in the forest would leave more questions than answers, and some say it points to something not entirely human. The man who could survive anything. On September 15, 2012, 32-year-old Thomas Seibold packed his gear, laced up his boots, and walked straight into one of the most remote and unforgiving places in North America. The Gates of the Arctic National Park in Alaska. Now, Thomas wasn't your average hiker. He was a seasoned adventurer. Years of training had turned him into a wilderness expert. From building shelters out of snow, to rubbing sticks together and making fire, to hunting with handmade weapons, Thomas had done it all. He could live off the land in the harshest weather and had even handled bone-chilling temperatures that dropped as low as 25 degrees Fahrenheit. If there was anyone who could take on the Alaskan wild solo, it was him. But even the best can't plan for everything. The disappearance. 2 months passed. Then came November 11, 2012. Thomas's scheduled flight home. But he didn't show up. Panic set in. Authorities were notified right away, and search teams were deployed to the last place he was known to be. For 13 days, rescue crews scoured the area, but nature fought back. The rough terrain, wild weather, and endless stretches of forest made the search nearly impossible. Eventually, they had to call it off. Even with all his experience, officials feared Thomas may have gotten lost, or worse. They believed the conditions were just too brutal, and if something had happened to him, finding his remains would be nearly impossible. But Thomas's family wasn't ready to give up, not even close. They kept looking, pushing through the snow and trees alongside park rangers. Their determination didn't fade, and finally, they found something. Deep in the wild, near Chandler Lake, west of the Brooks Range, there it was, a campsite. It looked like it had been Thomas's, but something wasn't right. The place was a mess. Torn clothes, a sleeping bag thrown to the side, a camera, a cell phone, scattered belongings. It didn't look like someone had just packed up and left. It looked disturbed, like something had come through it. And then, they found the journal. The journal. Page after page, Thomas had written about his journey. At first, it read like any other nature lover's diary. He was amazed by the beauty of the landscape, the silence of the trees, the crispness of the air. But soon, his words took a darker turn. He started to mention strange feelings, a creeping sense that something was out there, watching him, following him. The feeling wouldn't go away. No matter where he moved, it stayed with him. His last entries weren't just survival notes. They were the thoughts of a man who realized he wasn't alone and wasn't sure what was stalking him out there in the frozen wild. The photos recovered from Thomas's camera only made things more confusing. Authorities never shared exactly what was in those pictures, but people who saw them said they hinted at something unusual, something out there with him, something he could not explain. Thomas had gone deep into Gates of the Arctic National Park. This is not your average hiking spot. It is one of the most remote places on Earth. The park covers over 8 million acres, which is about the size of Belgium. It is the largest national nature reserve in the United States and the second biggest forest park in the world. And the entire park lies inside the Arctic Circle. The land is raw, untouched, and beautiful. But it is also harsh and unforgiving. Caribou, grizzly bears, and wolves live there. But according to old local legends, something else might call this place home. Something that has been part of stories passed down for generations. Bigfoot. There are no roads, no marked trails, no cell service. It is a place ruled by nature, where human presence is almost nothing. The path to Kobuk. From what was known, Thomas seemed to be heading toward a tiny village called Kobuk, hidden deep in the Brooks Range. The village only has about 150 people. It is far away from cities, traffic, or anything familiar. Getting there means traveling across some of Alaska's toughest and most dangerous land. During his journey, Thomas stayed at a place called the Cyber House. It was a basic shelter meant for explorers like him. a spot where adventurers could rest, cook, and survive while still being surrounded by the wild. It had just enough to help him stay self-sufficient in one of the most remote and breathtaking places on the planet. While staying at the Seibold house, Thomas kept writing in his journal. His entries showed how deeply connected he felt to the land. He often wrote about the beauty around him, describing the peaceful moments he experienced in the heart of nature. The journal captured his journey in full, showing both the highs and the lows of life in the wilderness. But that peaceful rhythm was slowly fading. Something was starting to feel off. At first, Thomas's journal entries were full of admiration. He wrote about the landscape, the wildlife, and the peace he felt being surrounded by nature. But as the days passed, something changed. A quiet shift in his tone began to appear. His words, once filled with wonder, started to feel uneasy. The peaceful journey he had imagined was slowly turning into something far more unsettling. September 15th. This morning the weather is perfect. Words cannot describe the incredible beauty here. Every cloud-covered peak, every flowing stream, every bird, and even the darting creatures in the forest seem to call to me. I feel like I belong here. September 20th. Tonight, under the full moon, the sun set with a fiery red glow over the icy terrain. Dinner was perfect. Meat, salmon, and berries. Your love and support keep me going. The people of Alaska are kind and generous, even though we have only just met. At first, his journal was peaceful and content. His writing painted a calm and gentle picture, as if he had truly found his place in the wild. But that peace did not last. Something deeply disturbing happened, and everything changed. September 28th. A monster came to my campsite tonight. It kept banging on the door. At first, I thought maybe it was someone from the village, but when I got close, I heard a terrifying howl. Its strength was incredible. It felt like it could rip the cabin apart. I did not know what to do. I spent the entire night hiding, unable to sleep. Tomorrow morning, I will pack up and leave right away. That night shook him to the core. Whatever came to his door, it was enough to drive him away from the Seibold house for good. He did not want to wait around and find out what it was. Instead, he made a bold decision to push even deeper into the wilderness. His journal described a new plan. He was going to travel 20 kilometers to Chandler Lake and set up a new camp there. But as he began this journey, it quickly became clear that he was not alone. October 1st. I have been away from the village for days now. My food supply is low, but it should last until I reach Chandler Lake. Still, something is wrong. I have this constant feeling that I am being followed. I do not know if it is a person. Sometimes I hear strange howls, like an animal, but when I look around, there is nothing there. I am starting to feel on edge. The deeper he went into the wild, the stronger that feeling became. It was no longer just a sense of being watched. The sounds he heard were not random. They felt too deliberate, too specific, as if something was tracking his every step. October 2nd, noon. I am feeling more and more uneasy. Today I found huge footprints in the forest. They were at least twice the size of mine. I also found what looked like a shelter made from tree branches. Several branches nearby were broken. Could hunters have made this? That strange sound is back again, and I am terrified. Whatever was out there, it was getting closer. The footprints changed everything. Up until that point, Thomas had been trying to convince himself that it was all in his head, that the strange noises, the uneasy silence, the prickling sensation of being watched were just tricks of an overactive mind. But now there was proof. Something had been out there, and it was big. October 4th, morning. Thomas finally caught something on camera, and it made his blood run cold. In the distance, standing perfectly still, was what he first assumed was a bear. But it wasn't. It stood upright like a man, but with a silhouette that didn't quite match anything he knew. It was pitch black, almost like a shadow had taken shape and stepped into the world. Too far to make out the details, too strange to dismiss. It didn't move, just stared. And that was the worst part. It felt like it was watching him. Not curious, not frightened, just tracking him. He packed up and kept moving, heart pounding and pace quickening. Whatever it was, he didn't want to stick around long enough to find out more. October 5th, night. Thomas had finally made it near Chandler Lake. The last stretch had been rough, but he figured a night of rest would help. He set up camp and made one final dinner with the last of his supplies. Some sausage and steak, enough to fill his stomach before crawling into his tent for the night. But peace wouldn't come. At 10:30 p.m., the woods stirred. He heard the faint crunch of footsteps outside his tent. Deliberate, steady, too heavy to be just the wind. And in that instant, the air around him felt different. Thicker, heavier, like something massive was pressing down on the forest itself. It was back. He wrote into his journal, panic creeping into every word. "It's here again. I'm terrified. Someone, anyone, please help me." That was the last time Thomas was ever heard from. There were no more journal entries after that night. No calls for help, no signs of a return, just silence. When a search team finally combed through the area, they found only scraps. His journal, damp and torn, and his camera, cracked but still intact, both scattered along the shoreline of Chandler Lake like they had been dropped in a hurry. Like someone had run, but there was no sign of Thomas. No blood, no body, nothing but the eerie quiet that still hangs heavy in that part of the Brooks Range. Whatever happened that night, one thing is clear. Something was following him, and it found him. The journal entries and the photos taken on his last days paint a terrifying picture. One of a man slowly realizing that what stalked him wasn't just a wild animal. On September 15th, when Thomas arrived at the remote cabin known as the Cyber House, the place felt calm but unnaturally quiet. Too quiet. Out there, miles from civilization, the smallest sound travels far, and so does the smell of food. If there really was something ancient still lurking in the woods, something like Bigfoot, it's not hard to imagine that scent drew it in. Something hungry, something patient, something that knew how to stay hidden, until it didn't. It's easy to wonder why Thomas didn't just retreat, head for the nearest ranger station, or try to call for help. But there are a few possibilities. Maybe he didn't believe the danger was real. He might have thought the noises were just animals and the prints were just bears. People reason with fear when they're trying to survive. Or maybe he underestimated what he was dealing with. He might have assumed the worst was behind him, that moving deeper into the wild would throw the creature off his trail. Or maybe he just didn't realize how serious things had become until it was far too late. Whatever the reason, his decision to keep pushing forward led him straight into the jaws of whatever nightmare was lurking in those woods. The unsolved mystery. All that's left now are questions. Thomas's final message made one thing clear. He was terrified. Something had him cornered out there. Something that didn't want him to leave. When the search party combed through the area, they found his journal and his camera, but no sign of Thomas himself. No blood, no gear, no clues. Just the vast, endless wilderness. And the chilling possibility that something ancient still roams it. Could it have been Bigfoot? Some people laugh off that theory. Others aren't so sure. Whatever it was, it left behind no trace. But it did leave behind a story. A story that ends with a man vanishing and a journal filled with fear. And that is what makes it so haunting. The theories. One of the most obvious explanations people reach for in cases like this is the wilderness itself. Alaska is no joke. It's home to some of the most dangerous predators in North America. Grizzly bears with jaws strong enough to crush bone, wolves that move in silence through the trees, and mountain lions that can stalk a man for miles without ever being seen. When food starts getting scarce as winter approaches, these animals grow bold, desperate even. A lone camper with a stash of supplies and a sizzling dinner on the fire? That's not just a meal, that's a jackpot. Thomas was isolated, deep in the backcountry. If he wandered into the wrong stretch of forest, territory already claimed by a hungry bear or an aggressive wolf pack, he could have become prey without even realizing it. A startled predator or a food-driven attack might explain a lot, or at least it should. But here's where things get weird. There were no signs of a struggle. No shredded backpack, no torn clothing, no claw marks, no blood trail, no half-eaten remains. Nothing. Just his journal, his abandoned gear, and the haunting contents of his camera. It's as if he evaporated into the cold Alaskan air. For a wilderness attack, the total lack of physical evidence is deeply unsettling. Wild animals don't clean up after themselves. And that silence, that absence, is why this case took a sharp turn into the unexplained. Some say the answer doesn't lie in natural predators at all. Instead, they point to something that's existed in whispers for generations. A creature that isn't supposed to be real. Something massive, intelligent, and elusive. Something people have claimed to see stalking the deepest, darkest corners of North America's forests. Bigfoot. While most people scoff at the idea, those who've spent enough time in the wild tell a different story. They speak of strange noises in the night, eye shine that doesn't match any known animal, and footprints far too large to belong to any man. If such a creature exists, it wouldn't hibernate like a bear. It would have to be out there all year long, moving, hiding, hunting. And the colder, quieter months? That might be when it's most active, when it's hungriest. Which brings us back to Thomas's camera. In the footage he left behind, you can feel it in the audio, in the way the trees creak, in the way his shelter shudders violently in the dead of night. These weren't the playful sniffs or lazy pawing of a curious bear. Something was trying to get in, something strong, determined, a creature that didn't just stumble upon his camp, but wanted him. And it may have gotten what it came for. The recording catches loud, deliberate thuds, heavy impacts slamming against the walls of the shelter. They come in rhythmic intervals, like fists or limbs being used with intent. These weren't soft pawings or the frantic scratching of an animal. These were full-force, bone-rattling blows, powerful enough to make the entire structure tremble. It sounded less like a bear trying to scavenge and more like something with hands trying to break down a door. Whatever it was, it had strength well beyond humans. Then, silence. The video cuts out without warning. No explanation, no conclusion. Just a black screen and unanswered questions. A few days later, on October 1st, a second clip emerges. This time, Thomas had ventured even deeper into the backcountry. The footage is shakier, more frantic. Trees whip past the lens in streaks of dark green and black, the world illuminated only by his flickering flashlight. The real terror, however, isn't what he captures visually. It's what the microphone picks up. Low, guttural howls rise through the trees, long, drawn out, and unlike anything known to science. These weren't the cries of wolves or the distant calls of owls. These sounded unnatural, inhuman. The howls echo from multiple directions surrounding him, as if whatever was stalking him had brought friends. Thomas spins in circles, his breath ragged, camera jerking with every turn. He pans across the dense forest, desperately trying to find the source. But no matter where he looks, there's nothing there. No eyeshine, no figures, just trees and that chilling sound closing in. Then, faint but unmistakable, come the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching across the forest floor, dry leaves and sticks snapping under immense weight. But still, the camera captures no movement, no shape, nothing that makes sense. In another segment, Thomas documents something just as eerie. Strange wooden structures, deep in the woods, far from any trail or sign of civilization. Twisted branches and long stakes are arranged into intricate shapes. Some are low to the ground, like primitive huts. Others stretch high into the trees, resembling tall totems or ritualistic symbols. There's an eerie symmetry to them, as if they were meant to be there, as if someone, or something, built them with purpose. They don't look random, they look crafted, and they definitely weren't built by Thomas. Then come the still photographs. One captures the gaping mouth of a cave nestled at the edge of a rocky slope, half hidden by trees and thick brush. The inside is pitch black, impossible to see more than a few feet in. Why Thomas photographed it is unclear. Maybe he suspected something lived inside. Maybe it was a warning. Or maybe it was his next destination. But among the photos, one image stands out, haunting, chilling. A blurry snapshot taken from a distance, almost by accident. In the shadows of the forest, a tall, humanoid figure stands half-hidden behind the trees. At first glance, it could be mistaken for a person. But look closer. The figure is too large, too still, and too off. Its arms hang oddly low. The proportions don't match a human. Zooming in only worsens the clarity. The details become distorted, blurred, but the feeling remains. Something was there, and it was watching. The Alaskan wilderness is as breathtaking as it is brutal. Stretching across millions of acres, it offers some of the harshest environments on Earth. Its mountains are jagged and unforgiving, its forests dense and labyrinthine. And yet, every year, people disappear into it, vanishing without a trace. Some are taken by the cold, others by wild animals or dangerous terrain, but a significant number leave behind no evidence, no bodies, no clues, no final calls for help, just silence. As if they walked into the forest and never came back. And Thomas? His fate may be the most unsettling of all, because the last piece of his story comes not from a camera, but from ink and paper. His final journal entry, scrawled in shaky handwriting, "The howling has started again. There's more than one of them this time. I feel so cold. I hope that once I fall asleep, I never wake up again." That was it. No further entries, no additional footage, no goodbye. Just that final whisper from a man consumed by fear, and then silence. To this day, Thomas's disappearance remains unexplained. Nobody, no trace, just rumors, eerie recordings, and a gnawing suspicion that something ancient and unknown is watching from the trees. Something waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to venture too far into the dark.